Hi everybody, and welcome back to our second week focusing on radical criminology. This week we're going to focus on Marxist and critical theories, which really takes a look at the economic disparities between those in power and those who are not in power. Some of this information may sound familiar to you as it is rooted in the traditional Marxist teachings that you may have encountered elsewhere in your studies. Marxism is really based on market capitalism and the continuously enduring struggle between the masses. The bourgeoisie is considered to be the wealthy ruling class that has the power, makes the laws, and dictates the market economy. The proletariat is the working class, the little dog who's fed the scraps from the table of the bourgeoisie. According to Marxian theory, class conflict arises in capitalistic societies due to the contradictions that exist between the material interest of the oppressed proletariat, which is the working class, of course, and really the working class who is employed by the bourgeoisie, and these are the individuals who are producing the goods and services for the wealthy. And then that conflict exists between them and the bourgeoisie, who is the ruling class, like I just told you guys, and they're the ones who are actually owning the factories, they're owning the means of production, and they're the ones who are gaining their wealth through sort of taking away the extra profit that is produced by the proletariat. So everything is coming to me, I'm getting richer, and you're staying as poor as you normally are. And this class struggle that we're seeing exists between these groups is commonly expressed as part of a revolt of society's productive forces against its relations of production. This results in a period of short-term crises as the bourgeoisie struggle to manage the intensifying alienation of labor that is experienced by the proletariat. But of course, even though this alienation exists, it often exists within varying degrees of class consciousness. So the proletariat often feel it a little bit more than the middle classes compared to the richer individuals. But that is all in respect to the more traditional teachings of Marx, and the traditional Marxism really is existing within a purely economic and market construct. But today we're here to discuss Marxist criminology. And like the conflict criminology that we discussed last week, Marxist criminology focuses on why things change, the identification of disruptive forces within an industrialized society, and describing how society is divided by power, wealth, prestige, and all of the perceptions that these classes have of the world. As Chambliss said it, he said it best, and I'm going to quote him directly from some of his work talking about this Marxist struggle. Chambliss discusses, quote, "The shape and character of the legal system in complex societies can be understood as deriving from conflicts inherent in the structure of these societies, which are stratified economically and politically," end quote. And as he's talking about this, what he's really saying is that we need to be concerned about the causal relationships that exist between society and crime. And we also need to seek to establish a more critical understanding of how the immediate and structural social environment gives rise to crime and criminogenic conditions. Like with the market conditions that we see in just the purely Marxist teachings, Marx saw the bourgeoisie as being in charge of law, in charge of the courts, in charge of pretty much the entire political system as well, and that the ruling classes often use law as a further mechanism of control and subjugation. Although law is meant as a formal means of social control, those in charge can manipulate the law however they want to in order to target specific groups. And we already talked about this a little bit last week in terms of race in the last lecture, but we can also apply it to social classes here as well. So think of vagrancy and loitering laws that have been established across the United States. Vagrancy laws have been set up as a way to control the actions of homeless populations and predominantly only affect those who are very, very low income. Think about the very last time you saw a homeless person. Perhaps they were panhandling, perhaps they were sleeping on a bench or on a sidewalk, maybe they were walking around and you could simply just tell that they were homeless because of their state of dress, or they had all of their possessions with them. In my experience, and this is just anecdotally, maybe you have had different experiences, but in my experience, many homeless people are simply just trying to get through the day and appreciate a little bit of help. For instance, whenever I'm in a very large city, I go a couple times a year for work. I normally find a homeless person who is on the streets my to-go box from a restaurant. I always purposely order just a little bit more food than I need to in order to make sure that I can give a meal to somebody else. And always make sure that it's packaged up, that I have cutlery to go, and I can find somebody who is normally pretty interested in having a fresh meal. Normally they're pretty thrilled to have the food, and only one time did I have somebody say that they were not interested, and it was only because they didn't like Chinese food. But anyway, that's a different story for a different time. Normally this is a pretty effective means of providing a stranger a meal. But anyway, vagrancy laws in at least larger cities basically outlaw me from providing this individual with my food and from the individual accepting it. These laws were really created as a way to keep the homeless off the streets and out of sight. We don't like looking at the problem, and we try very hard to make it go away. But the establishment is part of the reason why these individuals are homeless to begin with. Marxist criminology suggests that the bourgeoisie created the problem of vagrancy and then outlawed the problem they created because they don't want to have to face it. Vagrancy and homelessness is often bad for tourism. Large cities outlaw the homeless from panhandling during certain times of the day or from being on certain street corners or in certain neighborhoods. But it's a reality that many cities have to deal with at some point in time in some other way other than just outlawing the problem, hoping it goes away, and forcing the homeless to physically move from a specific area. Marxist criminology focuses on the relationship that the average citizen has with the state. Other countries like Sweden and Denmark use reintegrative shaming techniques to be able to adopt the offender back into society post-incarceration. Instead, the United States tends to use the Marxist notion of alienation when dealing with our offenders. Once a person is formally convicted by the state or by the federal government, that person is immediately considered an other. Marxist criminology suggests that a proportion of crime is said to be the direct result of society offering only demeaning work with little sense of creativity or advancement for certain social classes. However, the characterization of some crime as working class crime and portraying it as a response to oppression is problematic. It selectively labels crime committed by people simply on the basis of their membership of a class, without engaging in victimology to identify whether any particular class or group is most likely to be the victim of such a crime. Because many criminals are disinclined to travel far, working class crime is often directed at working class people who live in the same neighborhood as them. In fact, the social differentiation of crime may vary based on age, class, ethnicity, gender, and locality. Although this suggests one form of alienation, the criminal record only further exacerbates the issue, and we all know that offenders are very limited in their job opportunities, once again reinvigorating the cycle between crime and menial labor from a Marxist perspective. Furthermore, the actual power to label a behavior or a person as deviant or criminal also comes from the state. While there is some societal power to label something deviant, the bourgeoisie is solely responsible for the criminal label. Within a true market economy, most laws extend first to property and economic-based crimes, with personal crimes receiving secondary attention. The state feels as though property must be protected over people, and that the proletariat cannot understand this concept because they are not wealthy landowners like the bourgeoisie. So this one is exclusively about the relationship between the classes and the state. Next week, we're going to finish up our 3-week discussion of the radical theories by focusing on the role that feminism plays in the explanation of crime, or really the lack of female criminality. Meet me back here next week for that lecture, and we're going to start winding down the semester after that. Thank you for your time and your attention today, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. As always, if you have any questions, let me know, and if not, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Bye.